Welcome to Dad Pod, a community for dads and men.
You gotta love them boys. I'm hanging with my boys. Just me and my boys.
All right, everybody. Welcome to Dad Pod, a community for dads and men. On this episode, I'm going to be introducing my dad and my co-host, Troy Holmes. And so without further ado, I'll let him just briefly introduce himself. Hopefully if I can stay in camera view. Bear with us as we work with the talking situation. We're trying to figure out the best place for us to situate ourselves. So yeah, I'll let him introduce himself.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll get better over time. Obviously, I'm Clay's dad. You can see the family resemblance here. You can't do a lot about genetics, but yeah, I'm Clay's dad. I have 3 children. Clay is the middle child, and sometimes acted as the middle child. We'll talk about that too, because there is some truth to that. Two boys and a girl, soon to be 10 grandchildren. My wife and I have been married 43 years. I married my childhood sweetheart. We knew each other since the 5th grade, and she was my first and only girlfriend. We dated in high school and we got married right out of high school. I took her to college with me, and it wasn't easy. We were poor, starving students, but we worked hard together and we learned a lot of things together. And I thought I loved her when we were dating, but over time, I really love her now, and that just grows over time, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that too in the coming episodes. I got into healthcare. I thought I was going to go to medical school, but my wife Julie, she's probably wasn't going to be patient with me that long in school, and maybe I wasn't smart enough to do it. I got into the administrative side of healthcare, and I'm currently the chief contracting officer for a large hospital organization. And have been in healthcare for nearly 40 years. But I've done all kinds of jobs, and I'm happy to, we'll talk about that because that was part of my growing up experience. But that's me in a 50-second nutshell.
Yeah, your elevator pitch, as we say in sales. So perfect, Adam. Really, what we're going to talk about on today's episode, because we're excited to bring it to you. Obviously, he's my dad. We're planning on bringing on a lot of different people. And so what I'm excited for on this episode is to dive deeper into my dad's experience as a child. I think I'll find out things that I haven't heard from before. So we're excited to have this time to hopefully shed some light for you guys on, give you guys some ideas, just on your different experiences that you guys have, and maybe there's some relations, some similarities there. So to kind of dive into your background, Dad, I want to start with what it was like for you growing up, because I know your experience was very different from mine in terms of how Papa, I refer to him as Papa, that's how he's known as my grandpa, how Papa fathered versus how you came to father. And so I want to kind of dive into that. So tell me about some of your early experiences in childhood and what you remember about your dad, and we'll kind of start there.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Clay, because I learned after I left the house, I had more respect for my parents, and they seemed to grow smarter when I left and had children of my own, right? And it's like, oh, my parents don't know anything when I was growing up in the house, and then after you left, it's like, oh, I guess they knew more than I thought they knew. But my dad was I'll say a man's man, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that, because that I have the utmost respect and admiration for what he did, because my dad, I never knew his dad. We saw him for the first time, my brother and I, and my other siblings were little. So I was probably about 8, maybe, when I saw my dad's dad for the first time, because he was never part of my dad's life. And so this was just before he passed. And so I found out, because my dad never talked about his past. I really didn't know a whole lot about him in his life. But I found out that he grew up with his brother, just from a single mom's home, and they were very, very poor. In fact, my grandma worked as a cook at the March Air Force Base in California. And my dad said, well, I'd get one pair of shoes for a year and I'd be barefoot all summer. And he showed me the house he grew up in. And it was a two room shack. It was a front room and a back room and an outhouse.
Yeah.
And so he really grew up poor. And he was born in Tulsa, Oklahoma during the Dust Bowl years. So I was curious as to where he got his image of being a father. And he told us, he says, I always just wanted to be a dad.
Yeah.
Very much like you, Clay. You said that was you from the very beginning. And you said, I just can't wait to be a father. I remember you saying that to me. And so I was curious about where my dad got his model from. Right. And so he reminded me of like John Wayne. And I think because he idolized it. We used to watch his movies and I still like his movies today. And so he was definitely ruled with an iron fist in our home, and there was discipline, and we learned how to work hard. And that that was part of our life. Right.
So I wanted to dig a little deeper to see what your thoughts were, but what do you think? I mean, because a lot of guys, I feel like having that sort of fatherhood would almost take on that same mantle, almost reflect the same thing that they've learned, which is to be absent and to not want to be a father. They would kind of be delinquents, right? I feel like that would almost be the nature. What do you think Papa did that, or, why was his mindset different that he wanted to be a father in that regard?
I think it's because he didn't have one, right? I think he saw outside of his home others that had what may be quoted and termed as ideal families. And I think he wanted to have that. And so he broke that chain. He wasn't going to be a single parent or, creator. He was never going to leave. Right.
Yeah.
He was never in his
wasn't going to womanize.
Yeah, no, but he taught us old school values. I mean, I remember to this day, we were never allowed to call adults by their first name. It was always yes, sir, no, sir, yes, Mr. Jones or Mrs. Smith.
Right.
And he lived that law of children are to be seen and not heard, and we were always on our best behavior. And while we feared our dad, we learned a lot from him, and he did discipline us, which is good. We turned out better for it, right? I mean, and he was definitely the old school of God, family, country, and he taught us those things, and I'm very grateful for that. And from the time I can remember, we worked. I mean, we did the chores at house, in the home, and we were prepared for living outside the home, and when that day would come. And he taught us in no uncertain terms that your job as a man is to protect and to provide. And he would say, I remember to this day, he would say, well, I don't care if you have to work 10 jobs, you do what you have to provide for your family. Yeah. You're the first one at work and you're the last one to leave. Right. And you never call in sick. Now, those may not be the right things to do today. I mean, if you're sick, stay home. But it impressed upon us. It's like, because he lived that. He never called in sick, and he worked 6 days a week. And I remember my mom, we used to have dinner like 10 or 11 o'clock at night. And I thought everybody did. But that's when my dad got home.
Right.
And so that's when we had dinner, because she wanted to have dinner at the house as a family.
And he worked at Lucky's, right? Is that what he's?
He worked at different food chains. He was like a store manager. And so I remember going with him like on Christmas Day to check the store for the refrigeration and things like that to make sure it was working or whatever. But
good old retail.
Retail
holiday hours.
Retail's tough. And that had an influence on me because we didn't have a lot of money. But I know when we grew up, my dad grew up very poor. And he says, I would always be hungry. He said, so I don't care what time of day or night. If you're hungry, go in and get something to eat. Yeah. Just don't waste the food. He says, if you take it, eat it. And so to this day, I had cleaned my plate because I was taught that, hey, you don't waste food. And
You have to tell that story. Now that story's reminding me of how that kid that was brought over, he wore the ice cream.
that was at my grandparents' house, actually. So
Was that on your mom's side then?
no, that was
That was
yeah, that's on my mom's. That's
that
my
was your mom's
side.
parents. So that was Gramps.
Yeah, that's Gramps. And I do have a good story about him too.
Right. Yeah. I want to get into that one too, but yeah.
Yeah. So, but my dad definitely taught us the value of work, but respect as well, and hard work. And he was a good athlete, and so, I'd like to think I got my athleticism from him, which my mom wasn't a good athlete, but she was a good musician.
Yeah.
But he also made the decision to, I mean, he was invited to play by Tom Fears for the Los Angeles Rams. And
So-
he turned him down because he says, I need to, concentrate on and start a family. And so he felt like that was going to distract him from his goal of
Becoming a dad.
becoming a dad. Yeah. And so I think about that. I was like, wow, he was single-minded, right? I mean, and determined. Neither one of my parents graduated from college. They were just high school graduates. In fact, I was the first one to go to college, and that was his job, and he did it well and sacrificed for us. And I know he longed to be with us. And that was the biggest thing that hurt him, was that he couldn't be at all of our events and things like that,
Right.
because he was working.
Right.
And it killed him. I mean, we'd have one vacation a year and we'd go camping in the Sierra Nevadas for a week and get lost up there and stuff. But
And the station wagon, right?
in the station wagon, yeah, it was hardcore camping. We didn't have a lot of money, so we just did what we could. Road trips, right? I've got a lot of memories of road trips. So
Yeah. Well, talking about your college experience, right? I've heard obviously that story a couple times, but him being single-minded, right? How do you think that played into how he influenced you going to college? I know you've spoken about that many times, where he kind of wanted you to go to BYU. You were recruited by Harvard, right? Given that, the scholarship to go there, right? You were heavily recruited by West Point. I've heard a little bit about that, but why? I mean, kind of getting into Papa's psyche a little bit, and his way of thinking. What do you think? Do you think that played into it all? How he wanted you to stay family focused? Do you think he kind of wanted to push his dream off on you that way, or did he kind of feel like he knew that that's what would make you happy? Or in your mind, what do you think that was about?
I think he just wanted us to be good people, and so his job was to teach us, the values and the basics in life, and respect, and honesty, integrity. You never compromise yourself. In fact, he used to tell us, "You be careful how you take my name out there, because you're representing me."
Yeah.
And so we were like, "Oh, okay." So because he would lay down the law, But I wanted to go, and he wanted us to have a better life. And so he knew he was working hard, and we lived check to check, and we actually had family jobs to help contribute to that income, or that our family survival. Which hey, we're part of the family,
Right.
and I just knew that I didn't want to live my life that way. I wanted to have time with my kids, because he would always say it. He would tell us, he would apologize. "I'm sorry I can't be at your game,
Right.
because I have to work."
Yeah.
And so I didn't want that to be the case for me. I wanted to have a vocation where I could go and be a part of my children's lives,
Right.
And I'll say this, you mentioned it, you're passionate about that too, but I didn't understand love until I had my own children, And you'll do anything for them, right? I mean, it's a different feeling, and that, I think that's God's way of putting it into our hearts, of doing our best and being the people we should be, right? So
Yeah. So, I mean, in terms of vocations, you talked, well, I mean, we kind of shied away from the college thing for a bit, but I did want to talk about you taking on that early job, and kind of how that solidified your mindset going into college, and kind of because you were pretty determined. It felt like you had a really
I did.
big, like straight plan, which is very different from me. I there were so many things I liked to do that I didn't I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I just kind of went through stuff. But yeah, kind of go, yeah. Tell me about how that developed and how you kind of got that single focused mindset to do exactly what you wanted to do.
I've always had that inside of me, a determination to just be my best, right?
Right.
And to be successful or whatever it was, whether it be athletics or scholastically or whatever. I just want to be the best. I'm very competitive that way, even board games or stuff like that. Now,
Yeah.
I've toned that down a bit because I just don't have the skill set I used to have. So those days are gone. But in my mind, I was going to play professional football and I was
Yeah.
going to go to med school and be a doctor. And so I had some things, I had my life planned out, but just doesn't. I think it's largely because of the family setting and my dad's wanting to for him to him to be proud of me, right?
Yeah.
There was a large part of it because I think he was, and he we definitely knew as children that he loved us because he would tell us,
Right.
and um, as much as he was a disciplinarian,
Right.
we knew he loved us, but we sometimes feared him, because he was a big man and he laid down the law, so we didn't step out of line at all. Anyway,
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. And we'll talk about that too on disciplining, but as I reflect on myself and kind of the outbursts, it's like the emotion, the need to almost control your children because you want them to be good at the cost of like of you losing your proverbial stuff.
well, because you just want them to be good. Can't you understand? This is what's better for you.
Yeah,
That's just
it's just
this
not
doesn't
how
work
they
that
learn.
way.
Yeah, yeah.
They have to learn from the school of hard knocks too. But
Well, yeah, everyone kind of has to learn it their own way, and that's talking about breaking the mold, or changing the generational things, that the traditions or the ways that we teach.
Mhm.
Uh, him not having a father, that's really cool that he was able to, bring that to such a huge, like, yeah, a monstrous gap, right? Because he didn't really have people.
I don't know how he did it. In fact,
Did he have like father figures in the community? Did he participate much there? Like,
I'm
yeah,
sure he had coaches, and he never really talked about who his role model was.
yeah.
And I say John Wayne because only that's what he would talk about. So I think he would like,
Tune in for
maybe some-
Fictional Father Fridays. We're
Yeah.
going to talk about fiction, the impact of fictional fathers.
Yeah, the ideal guys. So I look back and I think, wow, that's really impressive that he was able to do what he did and be that father or manly figure. 'Cause he was definitely a man. I mean, he loved to fish and hunt and
Yeah.
and do those things, and play sports. And it was funny. And he was a good athlete. I mean,
I remember you saying that he popped up in a newspaper for and he had like a one-handed catch
Yeah,
or something.
just
as
back in the day in
yeah,
high
just-
school. Yeah.
right? With the single bar helmets.
That's right. Did they even have a bar? I don't even know if they had one.
Yeah,
but
they may not even. Yeah, they just gave him a
But,
leather skin
yeah.
and pig skins.
I marvel at the equipment that they had then and that they had. But yeah, he was definitely good. But he never what amazed me now looking back is that his father was never around. He saw his father twice in his life. Once when he told me this when he was 17, and then again when we saw him before he passed. And I never heard him say a bad thing
Smack
about his
talk.
dad.
Wow.
Never. And he could have.
He could have easily blamed or taken the victim mentality and been like, I don't have a dad.
That was totally impressive to me. Now as an adult, I didn't think about it then. I just
Right.
didn't know him. I didn't even know why he was not around or in the picture because we never talked about it. So I really only had, one grandfather that was in our life and
Right.
and two grandmas. But so when I look back about that impresses me about my dad, that he
Yeah.
that he didn't hold a grudge or blame anything upon him, for his circumstances or whatever. He never was that way because he was like, you do it yourself. You
Yeah.
know, don't blame anyone
Bootstraps.
else. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was definitely a pick yourself up by your bootstraps kind of guy.
Yep.
And so
And he made it. He did. He made it happen.
he did. He was a good dad. He did exactly what he said to do, provide and protect. And he did those things.
Yeah. That's, yeah. So awesome. We talked a little bit about him. I mean, in terms of jobs that you've had in your life, right? So talking about that single mentality and your focus, right? So, kind of coming back to where you started, you had a job in junior high. And I know you ran paper routes. I know you guys did a lot of stuff to kind of learn your work ethic. I want to kind of get a feel for how that shaped, going into college and your mindset in college, and then eventually into your career. I know he obviously, you mentioned he instills a heavy work ethic in you, but tell me about the jobs you took and how each one kind of shaped what your focus was in college, and what you wanted to do with that.
So if we got fed and we had clothes and things like that, so he provided the necessities of life.
Yeah.
But if we wanted anything extra, or if I wanted to buy sports equipment or go on dates or things like that, I had to have work, right?
Yeah.
And so I liked having money. So it's like,
Well,
I
that's
got some
weird.
money to spend. Yeah. Yeah. So I liked having that money. So it was fun to go, and we started with babysitting and, things we could do before we were 16. But we had paper routes, but we had a family paper route. And we delivered 5,000 papers every Monday.
How old were
Every
you?
Tuesday, actually. I was in high school. So we were freshmen and sophomores and whatnot. So we'd go out, before. But I had another job besides that, because that was a family job. And then I actually was, and Craig's my brother. He and I would work hard. So we were janitors for an animal hospital. So we do that at nighttime. But I was also a janitor for a private school, and I'd get up at 3:00 in the morning. This was when I was in high school, and go do this janitorial thing before school, and then I'd race home, take a shower, and go to school, and then do my schoolwork at after school, but play sports afterwards, because that was my thing too. But if I wanted to have gas money for the car that Dad would let us borrow, or if I wanted to go on dates, like I said, or whatever, he's not paying for that. And so he taught us to that point. Okay, well, if you want these things, we'll go do it. He didn't
You're
restrict us.
free. Yeah.
Go to work, get to it. And so yeah. And so I didn't know, and my parents didn't know anything about college. And so I had friends, fortunately, and their parents was like, "Oh, are you getting ready to take the ACT and SAT?" And I'm like, "What's that?" I had no idea what I was doing.
And
And
you
so
ended up crushing your ACT. You got a 30?
34.
You got a 34. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how. I mean, I think a lot of it was God's help, but I had
Yeah, you certainly
had
could do
good
that
friends.
in
I had good friends. I did fairly well, but but I had friends that helped me. So friends' parents that would help me too. So because I didn't know what to do, and even when I had recruiters coming for football, my parents didn't even help me. They were like,
what's a recruiter?"
This is, they didn't know what to do. And so I went out to dinner with the recruiters, and I went on trips to visit universities, at their request without my parents. And
Did Harvard fly you out? Did you go
no,
to see
he
Harvard?
came. No,
So he came out, right?
He
Okay.
came out. But I found interesting, and I still to this day don't know why my dad did this, but West Point was really trying to get me there, and they wanted to take me out to their campus, and my dad wouldn't let me go. He says, "No, you've already told BYU you're going to go there," and then they knew that I was going to go there, but I don't know why. And my friend to this day, who graduated from West Point, said that's the only reason he got into West Point was because they were going to take me.
It's like, hey, we'll bring your friend on too.
Yeah. So
he ended up having
it
a
was
lucrative
funny.
career too, from what I know. He had a very good career there.
Yeah, he did.
I wonder if it was because he didn't want you to be in the have any sort of obligation to the Army or something?
I kind of wish I would have gone to West Point, to be honest. But my life would have been so much different, right?
Yeah.
So, who knows? I think things go the way they're supposed to, but
yeah.
I still don't know why he didn't let me go there. And I really don't know why he didn't sit beside me when the recruiters were there
Right, and
and
offer
go to
advice.
dinner with me when they were taking me out to dinner. Because if that were my kid, I'm right there with them to help them all the way and not to get taken
Well,
advantage of. or
exactly,
something.
and that's the thing that I feel like would happen, especially from my perspective, because I tend to be more trusting than I probably should be.
Yeah.
Now, having lived in another country for a couple years, it tends to change that a little bit. But I know for me, if that was me sitting down at that early of an age, having gone just straight from high school, I would have been like, oh, that sounds like a great deal and a great place.
Yeah.
Let's go here, let's go do this. Yeah,
Yeah,
that just sounds
exactly.
really easy. Oh, I'll just sign away.
I think if I'm looking back and guessing, I'm thinking he didn't want to appear like he didn't know what he was doing in front of the other recruiters or
Oh,
whatever.
like he was an uneducated man.
Yes. Yeah, I think that was part of it. And part of it, he just flat out said, "Well, this is your decision, Troy," and kind of just left me to my own. What did I know? At 18 years old.
Even though that I guess even though that might have seemed weird, I mean, at least I feel like I can see from how that shaped your ability to make decisions,
Mm-hmm.
just in general, like hard life decisions. I feel like you
Right
are
away.
very. I feel like that helped shape you into even your current position and being decisive on things. Right? I mean, you're a chief contracting officer at a very large institution. I mean, from my perspective, I would say that's gone as far as, hey, I know how to make decisions. I know how to be decisive. I know how to
Yeah.
do these things. And would you attribute some of that to?
No question about it, because he led us and helped us to be independent. I mean,
Right.
we were ready. I was ready to move out of the house when I was 18. It was
Right.
like, because we knew how to work. We knew, how to, do our checks and, all those things that, get you out there, pay your bills, because they prepared us for that.
Yeah.
So I definitely have them to thank for that. And that preparation is like, okay, you're an adult, get to it. And he definitely treated us boys that way. It's like, hey, that's your job. Get out there and be a man,
Yeah. Let me kick you in
However, that's
kick you in the
fine.
rear and go.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He no pansies in his house.
Right.
And so he was that kind of guy that, you couldn't punch a tear out of him. I just remember that being him. I remember we were putting our own patio in, right? And he's sawing the bricks, and he got a chip of brick in his eye, stuck in his
remember this
eye, and he
story.
goes, "I have something in my eye," and he goes like this, and he shows me. I'm like, "Yeah, you have a brick in your eye."
You have part of a brick in your eyeball
I go,
sticking out about this
"Dad,
much.
we gotta take you to the hospital.
Oh, I'll just get it. I'll just pull it out.
Yeah, but he was that guy, right? I'd be like screaming, but he's got this brick hanging out of his eye. And yeah, that's my dad for sure. I remember we even went fishing once, and he got one of either Craig or I left our fishing pole on the side of the boat, and he's bending back to cast it, and his
it
hook
hooks the other one.
it hooked the other pole, and the thing was
Just whipped
the
around.
lure just came and just
Yeah, hooked right into his
right
arm.
into his arm, and the guy just like, oh, when he takes the pliers and he's taking it out of there, I'm like, ow. I'm sorry, Dad. Sorry, because I thought he was going to murder us. you
Oh
know?
yeah, dude, I would have been. I can only imagine how I would have been.
And he just, he was just like, no problem.
Wow, that's a kind of a good story to see the big picture. Because for me, I would have been. I mean, I get frustrated at Simon for swinging his lightsaber at me, and it hits me in the head, and I'm
Yeah.
like, not even close to having a hook in me, but
Yeah, no, Dad. He was just happy to be out fishing because he didn't get to do it very often.
Yeah, he's
So-
like, I'm not letting this ruin.
Yeah, I'm not going home for this.
I'm not letting this ruin my. Yeah, because that's the only
For
time.
sure.
Only time
For
in during
sure.
his retail years, but
Yeah, he for me, I grew to respect him and just admire him so much more later on when I became a dad. Right? It's like, oh man, he really did a good job, especially not having a dad. Right?
yeah, or just how burnt out that you can get from that type of work. Having done retail for just only
Yeah.
3 years, I was so burned out.
Right, and he would work 12-hour days, and 6 days a week.
Oh,
I don't even think you can do that now, but he would do it all the time.
No, it's not. I don't think it's illegal now. I wonder if he
Well,
even
he
got
needed the
overtime.
he needed the
So that
overtime.
was, yeah.
Yeah, because he's got four
Right.
kids to feed, and we ate
And
like
you guys,
horses.
yeah, I was gonna say, you weren't the smallest kids in the shed,
No, my brother and I, even my sisters, we could eat. But that's what he says. There will always be food in the house, and so
That translated for
Yeah.
us too. I know we didn't eat nearly as much as you. I mean, we got kind of the average, I would say, between you and mom in terms of our size. So we were never really that big of eaters from what I know. But that open kitchen mindset, I definitely translated over, which I appreciated. I always liked.
yeah.
I always liked the
I
snacks.
thought that was a good rule for my dad, and I know why, because he went hungry a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah.
Yeah, so he didn't want us to go hungry. He said that, and
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that neighbors and whatnot took pity on them and probably got fed, but he didn't talk a lot about that. He was definitely the poor child in his neighborhood.
Right.
So
Yeah, like that Christmas song that talks about the boy without the shoes thing. Yeah.
Oh, well.
Yeah, no, that was.
I have a
kinda
Christmas
his thing.
story about my dad too. You know that his first Christmas was the first Christmas he spent with Grandma when they were married. He really that was his first Christmas tree.
Yeah,
when they first
I remember that picture. That picture. It was like
and it's an ugly
he went-
Christmas tree my mom bought. I'm going, Mom, that's a great tree.
Well, yeah, that picture is funny because it's got.
We'll
I
have
mean,
to
from what
show
you
it
said.
one of these days.
Yeah, I'll have to come. Yeah,
I
I'll have
have
to
it.
grab
Well,
the
yeah,
picture.
I
Well,
have
I'll put
it.
it. I'll put it on there. But on the picture, it's like it's just covered with silver tinsel everywhere. And you said that your dad did that. He decorated.
Yeah, well, if you want me to tell the story, I'll tell it really quick.
Yeah.
So my mom kept bugging him about getting a Christmas tree. Oh, we don't need a Christmas tree. What do we need a Christmas tree for? My dad kept telling me, she's like, what is wrong with him? And this was their first, Christmas together.
Right.
And so she says, I'm just going to go out and buy one. So she went out and bought one and brought it home. And it hadn't been decorated or anything. And she put it up in the corner. And when you see the picture, if you posted it,
Yeah, I'll post
probably
it.
should have to ask my mom first.
I'll post
'cause she
it
may
on,
not
I'll
want
post
to.
it on socials and stuff so you guys can see it. It really is.
It's an ugly tree. It's kind of wonky. It's not a Christmas tree. It looks like a bush.
It looks off. Yeah, it's like it's definitely ill proportioned.
Yeah. But anyway, so when he came home, she thought he was going to be mad because when he came in the door and she said, he was just quiet and, even got him a little emotional, which is unusual for him.
Yeah, he doesn't cry, right?
And she goes, what's the matter? What's wrong? And he goes, this is my first Christmas tree.
Yeah.
I mean, he never had Christmas, never toys, nothing.
Well, if you were that poor, I can imagine that as a parent, you just would avoid it altogether because you didn't want to deal with that,
And
right?
if you knew my grandma, that's a whole nother story, but she was a different bird. But
Yeah. I remember
We
your
won't talk about
that.
so I can see, but yeah, that's a story. And so he then took that tinsel, when you'll see it. My mom said he placed tinsel like almost exactly an inch apart on every branch. He took the time to decorate
taking a
this
ruler and making sure it's perfect.
She said he was crazy about it, but you'll see. I mean, it's overloaded with tinsel.
It was basically just silver.
Yeah.
The picture really is funny to look at. I'm glad you'll have the context for it because it's definitely like hello in there.
It's like a Charlie Brown tree,
like the Charlie Brown
Yeah.
Christmas tree. Yeah,
but it's a special story when you hear it in context. And so thereafter, I should say something about that, because thereafter my parents, and especially my dad, tried to make Christmas very special for us.
Right.
Even though we didn't have a lot of money, we didn't know that. We got presents. We loved Christmas. It was great.
right.
We watched the Christmas specials, and whatnot. Because back in the day, you had to wait for the day and watch for on the TV
watch it
guide.
live. Yeah.
To say what night is it coming on. We're gonna watch Charlie Brown or the Grinch or whatever.
Yeah.
So those bring back memories, and I can still remember to this day the exact parts when my dad would laugh or when he would say something during that part of the show. I can remember,
Which has translated into us knowing what parts, because he tells that story like a good father tells the traditions about his father. So I can only assume that this will be the same thing that I tell Simon and my kids.
Well, this year marks the 30th year of his passing.
Oh, this was 30.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he died in 1994. I was only 31. So,
that's right.
yeah.
That's crazy.
But anyway, that's a good story about Christmas, and he did make it and worked very hard to make it nice for us, and it was.
And those have been fun traditions that you pass down to, right? We buy an ornament every year. That at least when I was a kid, we did that, and now I continue to do that with my kids because that's something that we hold dear. And even on the 24th, like one of my favorite part about Christmas is the build up, and then obviously seeing your kids. On Christmas morning, that hits way different when you're a dad. It's definitely
for
it's
sure.
definitely way better giving to your kids than it ever was as a kid. Not to say that I had bad Christmases, but it's
Totally.
way better as a
Yeah,
parent.
you'd much rather see them open their presents like you're excited
Oh
for
yeah,
them.
you're like, oh yeah, I can't wait to see their reaction. This is gonna be so cool.
Yeah. And then when they don't say anything,
And
you're
then
like,
wait, no, I thought that was gonna be I just lost a bet with your mom thinking that this was gonna be the best
best
one.
Christmas
Yeah, the
present.
one that you would love the
Yeah.
most. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's
So,
crazy.
it's a cool tradition how that comes down. So yeah, kind of transitioning, a bit from there. Let's talk a little bit about your career. So you're in college. You're focused. I know you were gonna go to med school.
Hmm.
Uh, had a few things happen after playing some BYU football, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. So, well, my first goal was to play professional football, and I was going to go to med school, in between or whatever.
yeah,
So I had a design to play professional football, but that didn't work. I had a back injury, as you know, Clay,
right.
and was nearly paralyzed. Had had to have emergency surgery and all that stuff. It took me a year to rehab, and they actually told me that I would never play sports of any kind ever again.
Well, yeah, you were 19 at the time, right?
19, yeah, 19. And so that was a bit harsh for me to take, a little depressing, to be honest, because I'm like, how am I going to, never play sports, not golf, anything?
But even then, though, your plan being so single-minded, like you were like, "Hey, I'm gonna go pro." I married my high school, well, really a childhood sweetheart, right? You guys were friends since fourth grade, but you were like, hey, I'm gonna get married. I'm gonna have my family. I'm gonna go pro, right? You had all these things, and then all of a sudden it flips on its head.
Yeah.
So what I want, yeah, I guess I want to give the people listening in.
It's not a perfect life, right?
Yeah, like plans flip on their head. How did you push past, right? You were 19.
Yeah.
You were married, newly married, right? A year into
Yeah.
your marriage, right? You're in college. You're in the middle of that. You break your back, and they tell you you're not going to play sports again. You were on a scholarship to play football. Uh, so how did you push past that?
Yeah. The first few months were really rough. And like I said, it took me a year to get fully rehabbed. I guess when playing sports, my mindset was always, I don't let myself stay in a bad space. So that's just my personality.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I have my times where I'm like angry or upset or
Yeah.
depressed. Even I don't really get depressed, but just down, I'll say. But I've always had in my head a determination to get past it or get through it or to succeed. And so I was determined to rehab, and so I did rehab, and I started easing back into sports. Not really hard, and I couldn't play football again. That wasn't going to happen. But I
Gratefully.
played volleyball, and I would get and play basketball with some of the guys, and at school. In fact, I did play volleyball, and the volleyball coach saw me and wanted me to play volleyball with him. So here's my
That's
dad
funny.
piece of this, right? This is that influence where he says, "No, I need to concentrate on my family," and those words
Just
came
right
right back to me. I'm like, nope, I gotta go to school. I need to focus on this. And I totally regret
Every
it.
boy's every kid's, at least everybody's like, not necessarily nightmare, but that moment where you're like, that sounded exactly like my dad. Yeah, that was the exact like it sounded exactly like him, and it was
Yes.
like, I can't believe that just came out of my mouth.
For sure. Yeah. And I regret it because I would have been a lot of fun and I could have
Yeah.
done that. But I was still on football scholarship and I didn't want to risk that. And what did I know in 19? I didn't have anybody counseling me or helping me, but so I just said, I'm just going to determine to get going, and go in that way. There was all kinds of other challenges, I'll say, in, yeah, in our life together. I'll say ours, meaning mom's and mine.
Right.
So we left school to try to address those. And then, a couple of years later, I went back, but because I told her, I said, I got to go back and finish college. I can't take a hiatus for very long. I need to do this for
Well, it's
us.
because you were in your job, at least from what I remember, and it was like you
It's a
were
dead
feeling
end.
burned out.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, this isn't going to be, I went and I was an EMT for a while, and I worked in the emergency room, and I was
Yeah.
an OR tech, just while I was, getting our stuff together. And I'm like, I can't do this as the rest of my life. I felt like I was under my abilities, right?
Right.
So I feel like I can do more, and I
Right.
want to do more. And so I told mom, I said, we got to go back.
It's like
Yeah.
George Bailey says to his dad, right, when he's sitting at the table, "You're in the business of pennies and dimes,
Yeah.
or nickels and dimes,
Nickels and dimes. Yeah. I want to do more.
I want to do more."
Yeah. And so that was in my head. And so we did go back, and I buckled down, and, I made the dean's list right away. And because I wanted to see, I took all these hard classes.
Yeah.
So I took calculus and physics, and it's just stupid, right?
Ugh.
And I said, okay, if I'm going to either do good or I'm going to wash out, right? And so I went back and got straight A's, and okay, yeah, I'm ready. And while I didn't think I could go to medical school, I changed my course there because mom was like, you need to get a real job. I hate being a poor student. And she was right, because we had Kyle by then.
Right.
And that changed our life, because that was a very challenging experience. And I guess for everybody listening, is nobody escapes the hard times. Nobody has a perfect life. And so it's how we face the hard times that forges within us a measure of character, because we decide who we're going to be.
Right.
Not because we're afraid that God's going to smite us, or we're looking for some kind of reward, or or whatever. We choose the kind of people we want to be. And so I want to be a certain way, and so I try to be that way. And then sometimes you don't measure up, but the goal is you keep improving. But I got my master's degree, and started going down that road. And I had some friends in college that, hey, you want to come work for us at Cigna? And so that was helpful too, making contacts and friends. And that's kind of how I just kind of fell into the healthcare industry from that angle. And it's served me very well since that time. And
yeah, so you said you had Kyle during that time that you were getting your master's degree and doing stuff. How was, for all the young fathers out there, how did how did that motivate you? How did that balance, were you able to see him very much, right? Like, in the middle of that hard time and that grueling, trying to overcome that feeling of feeling separated, but it's like, yeah, tell me about how you dealt with
I will
that.
tell you those were hard times. We were better off when we were at school without children, I'm going to say. And I really didn't want to have children yet, but mom really wanted to get started. But it turned out to be a really horrible experience. She got really sick and had toxemia, and then Kyle aspirated fluids and had to go to NICU. And so he was in NICU for at least a week, and Julie was in ICU for at least a week. And I'm like, this is what having a family's all about. I mean, we were 20, so it was that year after that, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is insane. This is crazy. This is how it's supposed to be. It was a nightmare. And that's why there's 8 years difference between you and him, because I didn't think we were going to have more children, because it was such a bad experience for mom.
Right.
And but Kyle became my buddy. I mean, I took him everywhere. So I used to work at BYU, and I used to take him. I was one of the intramural supervisors, and so
That's right. I remember this.
I would take him to school, and he knew more people than I did. That little kid. This was a couple of years later, but I loved him. I mean, I just I didn't know. I didn't know what it was going to be like until I had that experience.
Right.
And he and I became really close, and we're still pretty close.
For sure.
Um, but yeah, I used to take him everywhere with me, And I'll tell another story, which is really kind of shameful. And you can edit it out, Clay, if you want.
No. This is great. I'm just making sure we're staying on target.
So yeah, but we were walking. This is years later because we took a 2-year hiatus when we went to California, and then we went back.
Blue and Simon.
Yes, and so we were walking out because Mom was working at one of the hotels as a front desk person. Let's go walk and see Mom. So we're walking down from our apartment to see him, to see her, and he finds
what on State Street, Bulldog.
It was University, the one that goes down past the
University
stadium.
Avenue. Yeah.
So it was Comfort Inn right then, the one that's right across from the stadium Mom worked at.
Oh yeah. Okay, yeah.
And so we're walking down there, and Kyle finds $1 on the ground, and he goes, "Dad, look what I found." This is one of the most shameful things. I don't want to confess it, but it's one of the most shameful things I've ever done. And he turns to me, "Dad, can we get a candy or something?" And I'm like, and I'm looking at this dollar, and all I can think to myself was, because at the time we could, I can get 5 boxes of macaroni and cheese for this.
He's just like, "Hey, there's food."
And I go, "We'll see, Kyle." And I took the $1, and because we were living check to check. We didn't. I remember one month we had nothing.
Yeah.
And we just had nothing to eat. Anyway, but so I've hopefully made it up to him since then.
I'd say so.
But I remember that, and I think, of course, he remembers it too. And I guess I could have bought him a candy bar, but the things you remember of that stick out in your life, moments in time, and so I tried to live my life so I wouldn't have that regret.
Right.
One of the memories I'll share of my dad, going backwards, Clay, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
My brother and I were walking into the store with him, and my mom happened to be sitting in the car. She's all waiting in the car. And so we were walking into the store, and my dad was talking about something, and he said something about a swift kick to my brother. And so I foolishly asked my dad a question. And so I learned never to ask Dad a question unless you already know the answer. So I said, "Dad, what's a swift kick?" And so he rears back and just lifts me off the pavement with his kick. Boom! I mean, just leveled me. And my brother couldn't laugh harder. Craig was just, to this day, he remembers it. And I couldn't have been, 6 years old or whatever. But those memories, I don't remember anything else, but I remember that moment.
Yeah,
right? And so we have those moments in time where we make impressions.
Yeah.
So what do you want them to be, I guess, to ask yourself. And I laugh about it to this day, but I was not very happy at the time, of course.
Yeah.
What did I know,
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's awesome. The thing I kind of want to ask, it's been on my mind is, so, obviously you graduated, you got asked to work at Cigna. And since then, you've worked with commutes going to, from Redlands, California area all the way to Brea.
Costa Mesa.
Yeah, Costa Mesa, which is what, a couple hours at least?
2.5 hours one way.
2.5 hours one way. And you would do that. How long did you do that for?
I will talk a little about that because
tell me about like your career kind of there and how you balanced like the family stuff, because there's going to be a lot of people. I mean, at least for me, and I know a lot of people at least my age or those tuning in might wonder, well, what was his career life balance? What was that like with
it
your
was
family
a sacrifice.
So
yeah, when we came back and I was working at the hospital and trying to make ends meet, and I was going to school at the same time, so I was working full time and going to school full time, and I could take call, which because if you're working in surgery, you have emergency surgeries and whatever, so I could make extra money if I would take call when I wasn't at my shift. So my shift was like 6:30 to 2:30 or 3. But then I would take call every evening from 11 o'clock to 6 in the morning, right? And so if I could, because I needed extra money.
Right.
So I did this for 7 days a week, and then I would take 48 hours call over the weekend because no one else wanted to do it.
Yeah.
So I'm like, give it to me. I need
I'll
extra
take all the
money.
shifts, yeah.
So this is my dad talking, right? You just do whatever you can to make money,
Right.
to provide for yourself. And so I did that for well over a year. And that was not great. I'm going to say mom was not happy. Kyle was a little boy. I never saw them. And I just felt like that was my job. I had to provide for the family. I'm trying to invest in our future, going to school, because I go to school after work. Since I got off at 3:00 or whatever, I could go right to school, and then go in the evenings or whatever and do my homework and whatnot. And that was my life. And it was well over a year, and I got my master's degree while I was doing that. But they suffered the consequences from it. He was 5 or 6 probably, or whatever. This is still before you were born,
Right.
and so. And so I looked at it as it was temporary, and I knew it was temporary, and so, so I knew it was short term, and so I looked at it that way.
Right.
But even to this day, I mean, I like to work out, and I've worked out for my entire life, but this is why I'm an early riser, is because I would get up at 4 a.m. to do my exercises, because I wasn't taking anybody else's time but my own.
Right.
Right. And so everybody else was sleeping, so it was just sleep time, and so rather than going to the gym after work or something, I couldn't afford that anyway, but
Right.
but I wouldn't do it in the evening because people were awake and I wanted to spend time with the kids. So I got up early to do that, but it was hard, but I had a vision that if I do this now, I can have my 8 to 5 job going forward and weekends off. And that's what my goal was, because I wanted to break that pattern of what my dad was. He was never around, and of course he wanted to be around, but he couldn't. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be there.
Right.
And so it was a temporary sacrifice, but it was hard work. I mean, you have to have a little bit of vision.
But you had the vision and the why.
Yeah.
Right. You had that in mind, and you made a plan, almost around that, right? You got your master's.
For sure.
You busted, and you're like, okay,
in 2 years I'll be here.
In 2 years, I'll
Yeah.
have this promotion. This will allow me a
Yeah.
little more freedom.
Yeah, and it didn't quite all go that way. I mean, I remember I got my first job at Cigna. I was making $23,000. I mean, that's nothing. I made more as an OR tech.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, because with my overtime and whatnot, but I knew that it would grow into something, and so it was more of an investment. And so I gave that a year, and when they wouldn't promote me, I moved on to something else, right? And
But
so
you controlled
I
your
kept doing it.
controllables in your jobs, right? That helped you
Yes.
perform and stand out.
Well, you're building your reputation too, and so you're making business relationships and contacts, and you're building your network. But that whole time, I was like, I'm always going to be this person. I'm going to work hard. That my reputation is going to be, well, he's going to get the job done, and he's always there. If you can depend upon him,
Right.
he's going to do good work. He has good relationships. He's honest, and that was important to me, and that was instilled from my dad, right? I mean,
Right.
he says you need to be the person that they know they can count on, not this flake that you are looking to come to work and he never shows up, kind of a thing.
Right.
So your reputation is all you have, and he instilled that in us. And he was right, because I have lots of contacts, and everybody's industry is probably small enough, and so people in that,
Right.
and I hope that my reputation is one that he's honest and you can count on him, and he's hardworking and he's fair, and all those things that I tried to build over these years. So because of my parents, I'll say.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so key, I think. And what's cool about that is he didn't learn that. I mean, Papa didn't learn that from his dad, right? So it's cool
It was
that
innate.
that he kind of almost learned that himself, and that's obviously translated down to to me to some extent, right? Like the focus of even if I'm working in my jobs, the most important thing is making sure that I'm being honest,
Yeah.
right, and building that reputation so that others can speak highly of me, if that's that's at least my goal. Now, for those that are listening and are like, oh, Clay, you're full of it. Well, that wasn't my intention.
Yeah. And then
So-
to relate it back to Dad's, Clay, I think what you're asking, because this is the hard part in that space when you're working so hard, you're so tired, and when you finally come home and you're ready to go to bed, you have your son there.
Right.
You know, it takes an extra motivation or just the
Right.
extra to be there for them.
Dig
Right?
deep
You have
to be what they
you
need.
really have to dig deep, and so that's what I would say is I tried to do is when I was there, I was there.
Yeah.
And I'm certainly wasn't a perfect father, right? And no one's perfect, I guess, but and I wanted to be there. I was aching to be at home and to do those things with them. But even though I was so tired or whatever, I wouldn't let myself just say, I can't, Kyle. I can't play catch with you because I'm tired or I have to do this. Take that moment, even if it's like 5 minutes.
Yep.
They will remember that.
And that's something I'm like really trying hard to work on, because I'll be thinking about, we have 3 young kids, right? I have a 3-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 4-month-old. And the hard part for us that we're finding right now is it's really difficult to stay on top of the house being clean, the laundry getting done, because they are such good mess makers, and it's not their fault. They're just learning and trying to get through, they're experiencing life. And Simon will say, hey, Dad, let's go play Legos. And I am like, yes, let me do this thing first so that I can keep your mom sane, so that I can be sane. And something I'm working on is trying to kind of be the Mary rather than the Martha.
Oh, right.
Right?
Caught up in the work or the details.
Yeah,
versus
the big picture in the moment, right? So that's something I'm working on that I haven't really been good at. So like anytime Simon said, let's go do something, I'm just right on it. Yep. Let's go right now. I'll take 5 minutes, and then he'll get distracted anyway.
Yeah.
He'll go run off and do something else and completely forget. But being present, that's huge. So, and you were there. I'll say that from firsthand, right? Like any of my games, right? You were there. I don't really remember any time you were missing, besides the time that we went to go to Australia with to go get Kyle from serving his mission. But which I know Emily and I were like, why can't they take us? But now, having seen international travel with the little kids, I can definitely see why you did that.
Well, it's not to mention it's expensive.
Yeah. So, well, the last thing I wanted to ask, I know we're over time, and I wanted to thank those for sticking with us. You've transitioned, right? You were, you had the early stages. You had us in high school. Tell me about some of the highlights, or both for like learning experiences or things that you had going from the different stages of the different kids. The different ages that we had.
It's so cliche that this says time goes by so fast. It really does. And I can remember being in your shoes just like it was yesterday. And the thing I would say is just enjoy each moment in time with what you have. Because I enjoyed the stages. I remember when you were a little kid, Clay, we had so much fun. Clay was always such a happy child and just a joy to have around.
So excited I'd stutter.
Well, that's just the whole other thing. But he was just fun, and he would do some funny and quirky things, but which was totally entertaining. But I remember just as getting older, having great conversations and getting involved with the things that you do. Like, okay, so whether it be video games or whatever, or watching SpongeBob, I would do things that they were interested in. I wasn't necessarily anxious to watch SpongeBob.
For sure.
I ended up enjoying some of the episodes for sure because it was funny. I think it was written for adults, but things like that, I said, well, if they're enjoying that, I want to engage with what they're having fun with because they like it,
right?
And so, whatever that was, I whether it would be music or or books or
activities,
just I would do it because you liked it.
Yeah.
And And I enjoyed it because you enjoyed it, right? And so I would just say
SpongeBob
just
is
go with
also, at least the earlier seasons are just funny. They just
whoever
are.
the writers were, they were pretty funny.
They're funny. So he wants to say we did it for us, but it was also hilarious.
It was funny. I still remember some. But yeah, no, I just got involved in your activities.
Yeah, and I really appreciated that, right? Because we used to play Madden. I remember.
Oh,
I remember it was what 2000 Madden 2004. It was the one with Michael Vick on the front because uh, that was like one of the first ones that would let you franchise and let you do the business side of stuff. And
we
you got
became
into
the
that.
Tamale Bucks.
Yeah,
Right?
we were the Tampa Bay Bucks at the time.
Yeah, that was fun. I was no good at it, but I still had fun with it.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was just fun competing for sacks against the QBs. We'd like look at and in video games, it's easier to get, it's like, oh, by the end of the season, I have 90 sacks this season. I'm getting 6 sacks a game.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, it was fun. I didn't. A lot of my friends would be anxious to go on trips, or at least in 8th grade. I'll say this. They were anxious to go to the DC, Washington DC, and do that trip with their friends, and just like, no, I want to be away from my family. And for me, I was like, well, I want to go with my family.
Yeah.
I didn't. I was like, well, I don't. I mean, I love my friends. Of course, I'd go with them too, but like, I want to go with my family. I don't really care, what one way or the other. But yeah, it became something where it was fun to do things with you because I knew you would enjoy it. And so an aspect I think that really would help some of the people that might be tuning in for us is, in college, I learned something in art, as we were studying, humanities. It was the willful suspension of disbelief, which just means you're willfully suspending, if you're watching a movie, I'll give an easier example. You're like, wow, that would never happen in real life. That is such a horror. And you all of a sudden turn your brain off and go, well, I'm not going to pay attention to the deeper meaning behind this. And what that means for being a father, and like you said, right, is you're willfully suspending your disbelief that you will like the activity that they're involved in. And you have to kind of go, okay, I've never been huge for one to be involved in dance, but if my, if Irie wants to dance,
Emily did ballet for a while.
Yeah, I'm gonna go all out because that's something that she loves, and I think it's natural for dads for parents to do that. It's probably not something you have to really try hard for. Maybe you did.
Soccer.
Yeah, soccer.
Soccer was painful, I'm gonna say. But we coached, we officiated.
That's right, you did. You coached. Yeah.
And so because our kids
showed up to games,
our kids enjoyed it,
and Kyle was really good at it.
Yeah. So yeah, you just put yourself in there.
But that's another topic for another time. I know we're coming up on time here, so any final thoughts, Dad? That you kind of have about about masculinity and fatherhood before we kind of sign off.
Yeah, I definitely think I'm a believer that there are differences in genders on purpose, because together I think we complement each other. Right? We think differently as men and women.
It becomes apparent when you're married and you start having children.
And not that that's a bad or a good thing necessarily. I think it's good, and not like we can't assume some of the others, traditional roles, if you will. I have nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with that either. But there is an importance to being a man and being a dad and a husband and a father. There's a role there, and I believe in it. I believe my dad, and I still feel this way, to provide and protect. That will always be my mindset, and I feel that way, especially about Emily. You guys have to do your own thing, but
right.
But my daughter, that's a whole other story. Is daughters, but I always will come to the rescue.
Yeah,
because that's just my nature, and I think that's okay. And there's more that we're going to talk about, and we're just trying to set the stage here, Clay. And I appreciate you allowing me to participate with you. It's going to be fun.
Oh yeah,
because we're going to go over memories and things like that. And
yeah,
we'll probably have to have some rough conversations about things I didn't do very well, and I'm okay with that too, because the intention here, I think what you've started is good, and because I don't think that there's a place out there for men to go to feel like, oh, it's okay to be a man, it's okay to be myself,
Yeah.
you know, and to have these aspirations and whatnot, not be demonized for it.
Yeah.
And so it's not bad to be a man. And so, but to be a good man. And what I mean by that is to be honest and to be kind and to be patient, not to be domineering or not to be abusive. That is not a good man. A good man is protective in a good way, is helpful, is servant minded. And that's what we need in this world today is good men.
Yeah.
And so that's what I hope, and I'm excited about participating in this show, Clay, and in this podcast. I'll say,
Yeah.
it's gonna be exciting, and you know, I hope that we can help, because we've made mistakes, and I'm just older now, and so I've done a lot of different things, and some good, some bad, and my goal is just to be better, and I know yours is too. And if we can help people along the way, that's what we want to do.
Yeah. That's, I think, going to be the most satisfying and gratifying things about doing this. Obviously, any time I get to spend with you is awesome, and I'm I'm super blessed to still have my dad. A lot of a lot of people don't. You talked about you lost your dad at 30. Yeah, 30,
30.
right around 30 years old. I'm 33, so that's I consider myself blessed, and I'm hoping to get grandma or grandpa on here,
Yeah.
right? Because I'd love to get his perspective from forever, just get those principles, about what being a good man is. And it's not bad to want to, provide and to want to protect. These are things that make us happy. And there are more studies that come out, and we'll talk about those articles. I'll post those articles for resources. But society now is discovering that when men do generally what they would consider traditional things, and where people are trying to get away from, the less happy society is becoming.
Yes.
It's that way for women, and there are studies that show that, right? And so that's going to be the most exciting thing, is how we can stand up for that. And for those that are tuning in, we need to join together as a community, and learn to be better, good men, and be better citizens, better fathers, and better husbands. And we're excited. I'm hoping you guys can get that vibe. I know we've taken, this is our first time really recording this, so we appreciate you guys sticking with us as we, either ramble on, or we kind of get off, off keel. We're a little more scatterbrained. I'm a very scatterbrained person, because I feel like I'm always distracted, but we're
I can talk about that too.
yeah. But we are so excited that we're glad you guys tuned in. There's definitely more to come. Look for the next episode. And again, excited to bring the perspectives of other men and fathers. So, before we sign off, I'll let you explain. I'll let you sign off this time. I know we
Okay.
wanted to talk about, the live your legacy, right? I want you to, and you already kind of mentioned it, but I want to just briefly say that, and then we can sign off.
All right. Well, this was my thought, because this life you only get one chance at, and so you only take with you who you've become,
Yeah.
and you only leave behind what your legacy. And so, and it's our choice who we become and what that legacy is. And so, for me, I try to live that legacy every day. If I can have that in my mind, and this is the person I want to be, then I will be better each and every day. And so my invitation is to be who you want to be and to live your legacy.
Awesome. Thanks, Dad. For those of you that have read Brandon Sanderson, something I've thought about much of. I mentioned it earlier in The Way of Kings, but something they speak to kind of give themselves more power is, life. They say these phrases which really bring a lot of meaning to me as a father, which is, life before death, strength before weakness, journey before the destination. And so every day, let's live our legacy, and let's let's get better. And we'll see you guys on the next episode.